Good morning. Thank you, Sati, for having me fill in for Harsha. So what we'll see today is RNFL imaging using spectral domain OCT, most of which Sati has told us, but there are no financial disclosures to this talk. So we'll just see an outline of the background and the evolution of the spectral domain first, from the time domain, the clinical use, and a little bit of caution, and just a couple of slides on what's on the anvil. So the time domain was really the first wave of OCT technology and represented in clinical use by the Zeiss Stratus OCT. But the second wave of OCT was really the spectral domain, which came up with many companies when they realized that the time domain was a proprietary of the Zeiss, and they realized what a time bomb it turned out to be. So these are some of the few spectral domains that are available for clinical use widely: RTView, the 3D OCT TopCon, Spectralis, the Cirrus, and the Writer. So the shortcomings of time domain, why we needed to move forward, was that there were three major sources of error, as in motion artifacts, the failure to identify the upper and lower borders of the RNFL on low signal-to-noise ratio scans, and lack of registration. So we'll just see that. The OCT scan acquisition takes about 2 seconds. So that was too much for an eye to be fixating, and with the glaucomatous eye it took even longer. So you can see in this image, for instance, this is okay, but then if the image moves, then your scan circle will be here and your optic disc will be somewhere else. Sometimes there was failure to identify the boundaries. Now in a signal to noise ratio 10 scan like this, it's easy to identify it, the vertical distance between these two white lines, but then if it wasn't, then there would be a failure, like a media opacity like this. Here in this area, we're not really sure of what the boundaries are, and these low RNFL scans may not necessarily be glaucoma, but it might be due to failure of identification. Lack of registration was another problem. There was an inbuilt mechanism to have this pointer fix near a blood vessel where you could do it every time, but in clinical practice it's really a subjective assessment of the operator as to where the optic disc is in the center of the circle. So you're not sure that at every time point you're imaging the exact same area of the RNFL, and glaucoma being progressive, that was a major limitation. So is the spectral domain OCT better? Well, where motion artifacts are concerned, there was a dramatic increase in scanning speed. So before the patient's eyes could move away, the scan was taken. So that in effect was one advantage. There is improved signal noise scanning with the new technology because of better resolution. So the identification is better, and that's probably why some reports have come out as to the SD-OCT being able to detect progression or change much before and much better than the Stratus OCT could. We're better able to register the image because what the SD-OCT takes is a cube around the optic disc, and the circle can be adjusted later. So the patient image can be acquired and you can go away. You're not dependent upon the patient. As long as the optic disc is somewhere between the 2x2 cube, you can take your circle scan and place it later. So this is what it looks like. This is the cube, and this red circle is movable. So even if this disc has moved anywhere around, you can just move the circle. So in that sense it's better because you're not completely dependent upon the patient for fixation. So this is what the RNFL thickness is. The same patient on both. So this is pretty much similar to the Stratus. They've used the same circle. I'm showing this on the Cirrus OCT, but it's the same 3.4 millimeter circle that is used in all spectral domain OCTs, because that was what was found to be the most reproducible in the Stratus OCT. But these are what the images look like. They have also incorporated a GDX reflectance image in the Cirrus OCT, which wasn't there in the Stratus. The new feature in both, which is pertinent to glaucoma, is a guided progression analysis. It's called the GPA because all of us are so used to the GPA on the Humphreys. So they obviously couldn't call it a glaucoma progression analysis. It's a guided analysis, and over a period of time where the Stratus could only give you a slope, so this is over 5 years, it only gives you time points and color codes the scans, and it gives you a slope, but it doesn't show significance so much better. The Cirrus, on the other hand, has a little better robust progression analysis protocol, but that is still to be seen because it's about, you need about 5 to 10 years to detect the progression. So in summary, to summarize it, these are just the main differences. The main difference, of course, is that the circle speed is much more than that. The resolution is better, and the transverse resolution is also better than the stratus OCT. For RNFL thickness measurement, we looked at whether the stratus and the cirrus were comparable in the same group of patients across the spectrum of glaucoma. Interestingly, if we had a thick RNFL, it was thicker on the stratus on cirrus in glaucoma patients. Now this is the cirrus OCT and this is the stratus OCT. So just this graph shows you that the displacement of measurements with a spectral domain OCT is so much lesser than that of the stratus OCT. So the variability is so much more in the same group of patients. So interestingly, if you have thicker RNFL, it is thicker on the stratus, but if you have thinner RNFL, it is thinner on the stratus. So it's a little confusing, and they're not, the important thing to realize is they're not mutually exclusive. You can't have a patient who you've measured on the stratus and follow it up on the cirrus and vice versa, because probably because of the resolution, the variability is so much less. So then what to do with the OCT? This is what the usual clinical indications are. This suspects ocular hypertension and glaucoma for structural progression. So this is in suspects. This is what came out way back, that it does predict change in glaucoma suspects, and what Weinrib's group find out that 10 micron thinner average at baseline was predictive of a faster change in these glaucoma patients. We looked at the structure-functional correlation in suspects, and what we found was in ocular hypertensives, optic discs with the larger vertical cup disc ratio and thinner RNFL had lower FDT values. So these were all patients with normal Humphreys visual fields. And in this suspect, the smaller size discs had thinner RNFL and lower values of the FDT. So probably this suspects with smaller discs are the ones which get missed out, and those were the ones you need to be careful about. So the other question is, do ethnic groups differ? Because the OCT has only Caucasian eyes and the normative database, and is it valid to use that database across racial differences? So whatever was published, the Indian, and these are the Indian studies published, and the Chinese subjects had slightly thicker RNFL in normal subjects compared to all the published Caucasian data. So that's something to keep in mind, an average of 10 microns thicker in most Asian studies. So that's something to remember while correlating with the database. So we'll just run through a few clinical situations. Now, this 35-year-old woman with large discs and large cups, so quite obviously looking physiological, but you'd like to do a baseline imaging just to be sure that you're not missing out on anything. Normal fields and FDT, thick RNFL both eyes, improbable glaucoma, she was kept on treatment. So this is down almost 7 years now, it's still okay, and this is the stratus OCT, which is actually, it's thicker than even the normative database. So this is probably what we know, that in normal people it's going way beyond. So normal Indian eyes probably have a little bit of a thicker RNFL, which is why it is not even coming within this, but then she's been alright, and it does give you a statistical significance of the slope, which is okay. So then, when we acquired the cirrus, remember that the baselines need to be redone, but since we were then doing it on the cirrus, all these patients had their baselines on the cirrus again, and we have the advantage of the ganglion cell layer as well, so you can follow it up as well, but then the baselines need to be redone. So now all that information on the stratus is really redundant, because this is a baseline on which we are going to keep these patients on follow-up. So it's a good thing to have the ganglion cell as well if you can. There's no progression on the GP and the visual fields as yet, and we think she's doing just fine. The other thing we looked at in ocular hypertensives was, is there a correlate between the central corneal thickness and the RNFL in patients with ocular hypertension, and why is it that thicker corneas progress so much less? And we did find a very strong correlation between central corneal thickness and RNFL. So probably those with a thicker cornea have a thicker RNFL to start with, and therefore the progression to glaucoma is lesser. We've used it as a structural progression tool, as in this patient. way back in 2004. He came to us, pretty straightforward POAG in this eye. You can see this large NFL defect even on the colored picture and corresponding field loss in the left eye. Down the years he remained stable, but then for some reason there was some progression seen over here. So we did the GPA, and yes, it showed up a significant slope, and there was a definite downward trend in the glaucomatous eye, and it showed up a progression which was flagged as well. But when we looked structurally, it didn't seem very much different on the discs, and since he was being followed up on the stratus OCT, there was no change really seen in 7 years' time. So you really didn't know what was going on. And we just thought he had a bad visual field day, which we repeated, and sure enough, the possible progression disappeared, and the mean deviation slope was not significant. So we patted ourselves on the back and said, look how clever we are using the OCT to tell the patient, you are the one who are not doing your fields. This, which had come down here, the next two fields came right back, so it was all right. And then, since we had the Cirrus at that time, we repeated that on the Cirrus, and lo and behold, these values started going down a little bit. So you're not really sure as to what this 54 from 60 means. So you're a little on your back foot, and then when you do the Cirrus OCT again, it does start to get deeper, and these start getting wider. Now, knowing that the Cirrus is supposed to detect progression faster, you're a little scared, but there's still no appreciable change in the disc, and the fields show no progression whatsoever, even though there's a downward trend. But then we need to keep that in mind, that now that the Cirrus OCT is showing a little bit of a widening of that red area over the last year, we're going to be a little more careful with him in the follow-up, though his pressures are still 14. So we don't really know, is the stratus OCT redundant? We need to understand the shortcomings of the stratus, and despite advantages of a spectral domain OCT, it will continue to be a valuable clinical tool simply because I think the baselines of thousands and thousands of people worldwide are on the stratus OCT, and the Cirrus, most centers are in the last 5 years or so, and they don't have long databases. So until we can build that up, we need to keep our data on the stratus, I think, until we have substantial. But I don't know what's going to happen with the adaptive optics. Is the Cirrus already going to get redundant? But I think we need to, for glaucoma, not junk our older technology too fast before we have something substantial to build upon. So we'll just run through a couple of examples of what not to do with the OCT despite its greatness. Don't make it replace your clinical exam. That's something which I've learned over the years. We're very excited when we get new toys, and as our hair gets grayer, we realize that the new toys need to be our adjunct and not our masters. It can't replace the doctor. An abnormal OCT does not mean glaucoma, and a normal OCT does not mean an absence of disease. Now, what about this? Is this glaucoma? You have large discs, you have flattened RNFL, it's all flagged in red, and a deep wide cup. But if you see the patient, she has trauma, she has a relative pupillary defect, and yes, her RNFL is red because there's damage, but it's not damage due to glaucoma, and you don't need to start treating her. Don't forget, if you get a 50-year-old female, comes with headache, pressure is normal, but occludable angles like this. Discs are normal, and the left eye has a notch, it has a disc hemorrhage, it has an NFL defect as well. So anybody will tell you, obviously she's going to PACG, she requires early laser iridotomy, and the fact that the pressures are normal could just be that they fluctuate so much, it could be a daytime pressure which is normal. But then your great machine tells you, oh, it's all green and it's normal. And the reason for that could be that in the presence of a disc hemorrhage, there is some local extravasation, and we've seen that interestingly, that in the presence of an active disc hemorrhage, maybe the RNFL swells a little bit at that area, and it actually shows up as normal. So a green OCT or a normal OCT does not mean absence of disease, and a red OCT does not automatically mean glaucoma either. So new developments, I'm sure we'll hear a lot about them, but there's something called enhanced depth imaging, the EDI OCT, the swept source OCT or the high penetrance OCT, and what has gone on in imaging is the ganglion cell layer, the lamina cribrosa, as well as choroidal vasculature. So we don't have any of this, so I've borrowed this from literature which I could find, But this is just what the pictures look like on the RT view, the spectralis and cirrus. We have this, the ganglion cell on the cirrus, so that's what the ganglion cell looks like. It's been found that the diagnostic abilities to differentiate pre-perimetric with large physiological coupling were only moderate. Regional GCL and IPL on cirrus was supposed to have performed as well as regional RNFL outcomes for detection of early glaucoma. So it wasn't really much better. It was comparable to the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness in this study, and the ganglion cell parameters on cirrus was found to be more valuable than the circumpapillary RNFL parameters in eyes with parafoveal visual loss. And the circumpapillary RNFL parameters were better than the ganglion cell layer in eyes with peripheral visual loss. Now this is something which we need to look at, that if there is peripheral visual loss, then the RNFL is better, and if there is central visual loss, then the ganglion. Intuitively it seems logical why it should be, because the ganglion cells would be concentrated into the macular area, so we can't make blanket statements that the ganglion cell imaging is better than the circumpapillary. We need to correlate that to where the functional loss is as well. So to conclude, the OCT is an exciting development that continues to evolve, and the clinical applicability and use must be ascertained prior to using it, as with all technology. Thank you.